And during the Satanic Panic time, that was not difficult because every single week there would be ridiculous stories about Satanism or coming to steal your kids or whatever. And those, not just in weird things, like, there were stories in the Guardian and the Daily Express or whatever, all the main papers.
On TV and radio. It was
on TV
everywhere.
and radio and everything as well. Yeah. So we would be collecting up all this information all the time.
Hello and welcome to the Spirit Box podcast, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. Today I sit down with visionary musician, record producer, author and rock star Rodney Orpheus, and author, historian, and occult legend, the great Phil Hine. We're talking about Rodney and Phil's incredible new book, Delinquent Elementals. This anthology is a treasure trove of the pagan news zines from the 1980s, offering us a unique glimpse into a vibrant community. Rodney and Phil were the creative pairing behind Pagan News, and they share how their publication emerged from the thriving Leeds occult scene in the north of England to fill a crucial gap, focusing on local events and unifying diverse pagan voices across the UK long before the internet existed. We have a candid discussion about the infamous Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s, and Rodney and Phil recount how there were very real dangers that they faced from their work on Pagan News, and these range from death threats to indeed recounting arson attacks on occult shops, and how the magazine became a vital tool for documenting this dark period in history. And indeed, a lot of the features and articles that we discussed today, were out there challenging the mainstream voices. We're doing very, very right wing, and pushing down on any kind of aspirant pagan or occult culture. In the Plus show, we explore their innovative use of desktop publishing, their unique approach to occult satire, which features the hilarious Barry Hairbrush, and the legal and logistic challenges of running a monthly magazine that reached thousands. Bear in mind, this is all before the internet. Now, whether you are curious about the intersection between summoning laser printers using magic and modern paganism, the impact of the Satanic Panic, or just love a good story about community defiance, then this episode is a must listen. And more importantly, the book, Delinquent Elementals, preserves a vital piece of occult history for future generations. Now, if you'd like to hear the Plus show, there are many ways to do so, but the simplest and easiest is to come and join the Patreon. You'll get access to this Plus show and 5 years of Plus shows and extra content, including a whole other podcast called Nameless, where Tommy Kelly and I discuss whatever's really going on in our heads. And we're about midway through a course in pendulum use. If anyone will finesse your skills with that particular divination tool or dowsing tool. But if that doesn't float your boat and you still want to support me, then pick up a copy of my book, Song of the Dark Man, Father of Witches, and I will be most grateful. Okay, let's get on with the show. Lovely stuff. Phil, I was going to kind of welcome you back, but I said you're close to being part of the furniture here now. You've been on this many times, so I won't have to ask you to introduce yourself. Everyone knows this point. Rodney, you're the newbie. It'd be very nice to welcome you to the show. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourselves?
I'm Rodney Orpheus. I'm a musician, record producer, technology person. I play with the band called the Cassandra Complex. We just finished a world tour. 49 shows in 13 countries. I do a lot of record production for other bands some people might have heard of, some maybe people haven't heard of. I've written a few books as well. I wrote Abrahadabra, A Beginner's Guide to Aleister Crowley's Magic. I wrote Grimoire of Aleister Crowley, and the latest one was Phil, Delinquent Elementals. Mm-hmm. And I live in Los Angeles, though I'm originally from the wonderful country of Ireland.
Stuff. Well, Phil very kindly sent me the preview e-copy of the book Delinquent Elementals, which I really enjoyed. And I was just going because I remember, Phil, you mentioned it the last time you were on about the kind of the project you were kind of wrapping up and how you had kind of been chasing this down for a number of years to kind of aggregate all these old copies. But just reading through the intro, I know we'll get into it now for listeners, but like how you started off. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but for everybody who is listening, this is a kind of an anthology of all the zines, the pagan news zines that you guys produced throughout the early 80s and what have you. And it's fabulous reading through them. Because I'm old enough now that I recognize some of the stuff you're talking about, in it, like, which is really cool. But I also kind of really appreciate reading about the effort that you guys went into to set this up and how it all came together. It's just a great read, and that kind of like all that pre kind of internet, or I guess the early days of the internet, and kind of getting building out that network of news has been so hard to get to at the time. So I can imagine this was kind of like a cherished, document or newspaper that so many people would have gotten and meant a huge amount to a certain kind of generation of people. But I really got that vibe reading through it.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of over to you guys. What sparked the idea of getting this together?
Well, I guess we might have different stories about that, but I was involved with a kind of pagan activist network called Pagan Link, and it was a kind of a decentralized network of pagan folk who wanted to get in contact with each other. One thing that Pagan Link started doing was little kind of like regional news zines. Now, at that time, there were a lot of occult magazines, but they tended to come out on a kind of ad hoc basis, and they were mostly full of people arguing about, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin kind of thing. A lot of theory and some practice, and they were very siloed. So they were kind of like Wiccan zines that were all woo, and Thelemic zines that were just like full of Crowley quotes and very little original thought, and various things in between. What these Pagan Link newsletters did was kind of like break away from that zine format, and they actually covered local events and local news. So, people who were running courses and things, and things that have been happening in the locality. Northern Pagan Link News, which was the first incarnation, if you like, of Pagan News, the free version, was one of those regional Pagan Link newsletters. And I think we started off, the first issue we did 25 copies.
Right.
And by about 4 months later, we were doing 600, 700, 800 copies.
Amazing.
And then I think when it became Pagan News, it went into the thousands after that. And so how I got involved is I had moved from Northern Ireland over to Leeds and was working at the Sorcerer's Apprentice shop in Leeds, and formed the Leeds University Occult Society with somebody else. And then one day there was a knock on my door, and I opened the door, and this guy was standing on the doorstep saying, "Hey, I heard I'm doing this thing, and thought you might be able to help me." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not? Come on in." And
awesome.
That's how we started. Literally came and knocked on my door.
Brilliant.
We had actually met before then. You might not remember. We'd met at the Leeds University
briefly.
Occult Society.
Yeah, we met at the Occult Society, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we weren't total strangers. And that was a good thing about Leeds. It had a very vibrant occult scene, and there were a lot of people
very much so. Yeah.
running around doing all kinds of shit,
Well, there was basically, those two parallel things with the Leeds University Occult Society, which had at one point over 100 members. And we were holding lectures and meetings and stuff every month, at least once a month. And then there was the Sorcerer's Apprentice store. And the Sorcerer's Apprentice had like over 20,000 mail order customers. It was the biggest occult store in the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Especially back in those days.
Yeah.
It was by far the biggest occult store in the world, by far. and every Saturday morning they held they had a little coffee shop. They opened up on a Saturday morning, and the shop was closed closed to browsers. It was only open for mail order, except for Saturday mornings.
Right.
And the so everybody who was anybody in the occult scene would turn up on a Saturday morning to go shopping there, because it was only open for about, I think, 9 to 12 or something.
Right.
So you had 3 hours in the store, like this magical wonderland, to buy anything you wanted, and then you would go to the coffee shop, have a cup of tea or whatever, and sit around. And everyone sat around. No, they had huge tables, so it wasn't like, so everyone sat around together and chatted, and that's how we all got to know each other.
Brilliant. And so, what year are we talking here?
88.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think March 88 was the first issue of Northern Pagan News.
Yeah. And I'm going through the issues. I know we spoke briefly on this last week, Phil, but like I was noting, like, even though there's a lot, I mean, like, you talk about kind of Viz being an inspiration in part with this, you know, and for our American listeners who may not know what Viz is, there's a wonderland for you. Just a Google away, a wonderland of top tips, Viz top tips, one of the greatest publications of all time. But they're definitely, you've got that kind of like fun kind of satirical element to it as well. But you certainly tackled some of the kind of the spikier issues of the day, you know, so like a Mary Whitehouse being referred to you know, some of the challenges around kind of censorship, the view of the press, or of things like the Satanic Panic, you know, like, so there was no kind of shirking away from some of the kind of thornier subjects that certainly would have affected the pagan community quite significantly.
Far from it. I mean, we were absolutely upfront, in your face about stuff like that. We did not want to shirk away from anything that was controversial or political. Quite the opposite. We wanted to be attacking it head on. One of the things that disturbed us, I think, and still disturbs me to this day, is that people think that, oh, it's occultism, it's beyond material politics, it's so, you know, blah blah blah. And of course, it's not. Everything's political, and you know, occultists have been prejudiced against for centuries.
Sure.
And to ignore that is an abrogation of your own responsibilities. It's also very stupid, because you might not be political, but they'll certainly be political against you. And so we wanted to really fight against that, fight the power man.
Yeah, so we you know, anything that interested in us, we just shoved in in Northern Pagan News and then in Pagan News. You know, because
I mean,
the government at the time were pushing family values, and by family values they mean the straight nuclear family.
1 man, 1 woman, 2.5 children.
Yeah, and anything outside of that was kind of like seen as dangerous or deviant, and that included pagans. You know, regardless of your sexual orientation or whatever, we were all dangerous. So you know, we cast on that as widely as we could.
Yeah, and we also believe very firmly, and again, still believe to this day, that the only way to fight against that is together. You need to form communities, work as a community. Because an individual against the state is almost certainly going to lose. So we wanted to create, and as you say, as Phil said earlier, I mean, we up until that point, most occulty magazines and single bullshit, or else were incredibly niche, specialized thing that had maybe 20 or 30 subscribers. And we weren't interested in that. We wanted to get to thousands of people.
Right.
We wanted thousands and thousands of occultists of all stripes, of all particular persuasions or niche beliefs. We wanted us to all to work together as one group. And I think we achieved that. Actually, we did very well in that. Because at its height, Pagan News was read by everybody. If you had even the slightest interest in magic or occultism or whatever it is, this weird spiritual thing we do, you were reading Pagan News every single month regularly.
Which was something we used to get shops to sell it, and to get advertising in, which was our main source of revenue.
Absolutely.
We'd go to people and say, look, we're bringing out an issue every 3 weeks, and you're going to get a lot of repeat customers for it. So you should stock it in your shop. And if you really want to support us, check out a display ad.
Right.
And that, that works amazingly.
You want to widen your business, you want to get to a new sector of customers, come to us. So every occult business wanted to advertise with us because it was a way to get to everybody.
Right.
So,
apart from a few bastards, of course.
Apart from, there's always a few bastards.
I mean, there were those who said, not mention any names, "Oh, you'll never do it." You'll never bring out a zine every 3 weeks. Which obviously gave us the impetus to do exactly that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we were driven by sheer contrariness a lot of the time. Every time people told us you can't do that, we'd be like, "Oh yeah, we'll show you."
I love it. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, that's awesome. I know there's an awful lot of listeners that probably won't understand the impact, and kind of how kind of an underground magazine could have got to that size and have that kind of cultural influence, given just they're absorbed by kind of the age of the internet, right? But is this something that you would see as given the kind of crossroads that we're in at the moment? The world is a strange place of kind of pressure and conflict burgeoning everywhere. Is this something you think is going to kind of return in some way? It's kind of an oblique question, so if you think it's a load of shit, feel free to tell me.
Well, I'm living in Los Angeles now at this very minute.
Yeah.
There's protests against fascism going on down the street right now, right here. There are thousands of troops on the street being asked to police normal working people. It's not good. So yeah, I mean, obviously, we're still facing the same kind of problems. I mean, I think, as you say, pagan news was pre-internet, and I mean, people of a certain age, as we are, will remember what it was like when, one of the things we started with, one of the foundational, when we first started putting this together, we were thinking we had a little sort of internal manifesto of what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. And one of the overriding theories that we had was news is only news when it's new.
Right.
Which is very obvious in the age of the internet because, I can log in, turn on my browser now and see what's happening right now down the street in LA. And anybody anywhere in the world can see what's happening right now to some limited extent or another. But back then, getting news about these kind of things that we were dealing with, about anything to do with magic or occultism, was like pulling teeth. And most fanzines, most zines, most occult magazines came out maybe once every 6 months if you were lucky.
Right.
And so by the time they were dealing with anything that was happening, it was already gone. It was over. That's why we had a very strict monthly schedule. Yeah. We never wanted a month between something happening and us talking about it and reporting on it. And we had to really go look for the news. It wasn't there at the click of a button. So every Sunday we'd have an editorial meeting. We'd go down to the newsagents down the street from my house and buy every newspaper, every Sunday newspaper. And we'd been collecting up daily newspapers during the week. And then on Sunday afternoons, late mornings, afternoons, we would get some food out, get some snacks, and we would spread the newspapers out all over the floor and just go through all the newspapers looking for any nugget of information we could find. And during the Satanic Panic time, that was not difficult because every single week there would be ridiculous stories about Satanism or coming to steal your kids or whatever. And those, not just in weird things, like, there were stories in the Guardian and the Daily Express or whatever, all the main papers.
On TV and radio.
On TV and radio and everything as well. Yeah. So we would be collecting up all this information all the time. And then also, I was one of the very first people to actually be connected to the proto-internet through hacking various systems. And we would also go out and search for stuff on this is pre-World Wide Web. The World Wide Web didn't even exist then. Right. And we'd go out to bulletin boards and stuff like that and find other information as well. And we'd collect all this together and write about it and put it out every month. So it was like, that was the fastest turnaround of news in this sector that anyone had ever even thought of. No one even got close to it.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine that.
And that made the magazine extremely compulsive. I mean, if you didn't read it, you were missing out. So we used that FOMO, that fear of missing out thing, very much. So, like, basically, if you weren't reading Pagan news, you didn't know anything. Right. And so everybody had to read it, because if you didn't know what anyone else was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's the people, I have people come up to me and say, I don't like this article, or I don't like that, or I don't like this and I don't like that, but I still think you're doing a good thing,
Yeah.
Or people would hate read it.
And then some people get hate mail,
Yeah, some people would hate read it because they wanted to see what assholery we were coming up with this one.
Some of the best complaining letters we've got are in the Delinquent Elementals. Yeah, I think my favourite is the one that says, this scene is nothing more than the ravings of feminists and anarchists. And we were like, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly us. Thank you. So yeah, we used to get hate mail all the time, and which we encouraged. So we had a very vibrant letters page at the back of each magazine and back of each issue. So and every month, without fail, we would get at least one, usually many letters, starting off with, "I know you're not going to print this, but," and that was like a red rag to a bull for us. I mean, we'd be like, and so we came up with this notion of star letters. So every month we'd have star letter, and we'd have little rainbows and stars around it, and put it in some little place. And it would always be the most nastiest hate mail we would get. We would put it in star letter. And some people would write back and go like, "How dare you?" And then that would be next month's star letter. And they never seemed to click to the fact that the more vituperous they were, the bigger the placing they would get in the magazine. And we actually used some of those star letters are now in the blurb on the back of the book and in the marketing thing. So thank you to all those people who wrote us hate mail. You're still marketing for us like 40 years later.
The slight downside to all that is I used to go to a lot of pagan conferences and moots, and sometimes I'd kind of like run bank slap into these people who were sending us the hate mail, which was a bit uncomfortable, but there you go, I was never actually beaten up, although some people did threaten it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, not brilliant, but well done for winding them up.
Yes.
And when you decided to pull this kind of anthology together, what was the kind of the determining factor? You go, right now is the kind of the appropriate time to do it. What was the kind of the driving impetus?
There were a couple. I mean, one was COVID. We were locked down in COVID. Right. We had already decided to do it just before COVID, but COVID was a great opportunity for us to. We were both in London, and we both couldn't do anything, so we both started hauling out all our. We both still had all the back issues,
right?
So we hauled them out, started scanning them and going through them, writing back and forth every day, and starting to put the whole thing together. And all the footnotes. About a third of the book is new material. I remember writing a bunch of that. It was a beautiful summer, and I was out in the backyard of my house. Everything was super quiet because everything was in lockdown.
Yeah,
and I was just laying on a couch outside my house, just hammering away at the footnotes, and that was really cool. I mean, that was one of the good things about doing it now is that a lot of the people we were writing about back then are now dead,
right.
And you can't libel the dead. So we were able to actually write the truth of stuff that we weren't allowed to write about before.
Right, okay.
We had to be really careful about what we wrote about, because England's very famously litigious about. The UK has very, very strict libel laws.
Yeah.
So we had to be really, really careful. But yeah, like I say, you can't libel the dead. So a lot of these people were dead, and also in the succeeding years. A lot of these people we were writing about showed their true colors. There were things that we could hint about or make allusions to, that we could openly say, yeah, this person did this and blah blah blah. And here's what happened later, and we could talk about various cases and court cases or whatever, and say, here's what happened in the end. Here's how it all turned out, etc. So. Being able to revisit that stuff and put it in its historical context was really valuable, I think. And so I think, one of the things I find, and the other thing we wanted to write about is that most of the young people coming into occultism today, they don't even know what the Satanic Panic was. I was talking to a lot of young people, I'd mention this, and they'd look at me like, you can't be serious. It's very difficult to imagine that there was this like enormous conspiracy, basically, by right-wing Christians to blame child abuse on imaginary Satanists,
and left-wing social workers,
and left-wing social workers, right-wing Christians and well-meaning left-wing social workers who also believed in this crap, and it was incredibly widespread. It's so much so, like I mentioned earlier, it was in all the mainstream newspapers, it was on the TV all the time. This was just hammered at us. So it's very difficult for young people today to understand how fragile our situation is. I mean, maybe, again, here in Los Angeles today, we're starting to realize how fragile it is. So we wanted to make sure that, so by reissue, like you say, people of a certain age can remember what happened, and it's really good for them for us at our age to be able to look back and go, yeah, these are the things we lived through, and here it is in context, and here's what was happening behind the scenes. So I think that's really important. But for younger people, this is a really important historical document in my mind. This is what happened. This is what we had to go through to make the world the way it is today for us. And also, I mean, we had, the other thing is that we ran a lot of great interviews and articles by people that were at the time not so well known, and but now are like legendary figures. So I think there's a lot of really good interviews and articles that really put a lot of our history of magic and modern day paganism and magic in context.
And there's a huge value in that. Like, and this is, I suppose, it's one of the things that we've spoken about a few times, Phil. Like about kind of like building out the kind of the history of the occult. I mean, this is a very much kind of quite a unique book in that sense. That it is got the pulse of an era. Captured in their original format. And again, as you mentioned, Rodney, with the kind of the postscriptum footnotes on a kind of what actually happened, sometime later. It's a very, very valuable thing, and I certainly think that the lens of that period, particularly around the Satanic Panic, is extremely useful and timely for occultists in the present day.
It hasn't gone away. Exactly. It hasn't gone away. I mean, it. As you can see if you read through the book, you can see how the rise and fall of the Satanic Panic, effectively. But it never went away. It just went underground. There's still been, up to this day, for the last 4 decades, there's been these weird ass, Christian authoritarian groups still trying to build this thing, and they're trying to bring it back now. I mean, with QAnon, the whole QAnon thing, the whole thing that's happening in the USA right now is very much derived from that, and in many cases from the same sources, exactly the same sources and the same people. So I think it's important for people to realize just how deep the roots of that insanity goes. And the kind of things they were trying to do, the kind of things they were trying to do are the kind of things we're seeing in Trump's America right now.
Yeah. And I think Rodney's quite right about this, because after what we saw, particularly with the North American panic, and kind of repeated a bit with the British panic, was that it produced a wave of experts who then went on to monetize that expertise.
Yeah.
So, the people who were turning up on Look North or, After Dark or whatever chat show went on to write books, do videos, and pushing the whole Satanic Panic narrative became a business for them as much as anything else. And, they're going to do their best to keep that business alive. And we see that cycle being repeated time and time again in North America and in Britain to a lesser extent. They want to keep it going. I mean, there's...
Yeah. The grift. Never give up on the grift. The first rule of being a con man is you never give up the con.
Yeah, and it just gets repeated in different iterations. We saw that right throughout the last 2 decades in Britain.
Yeah, and we're, as you said, this is. I think we're on the cusp of it again. Of a quite a chunky one. That could be my own. Projection. But certainly I've noted those kind of like we were chatting about before, Phil, like that, this commentary left on things of like I am in the name of Jesus, I reject all kind of whatever, this kind of stuff, on like YouTube videos, and like that's just the kind of like that kind of stuff I think is so widespread, and people are kind of so reactionary in terms of kind of how they're kind of fracturing into kind of idealistic camps that just becomes part of the uniform they wear, in terms of their ideas, in terms of how they see the world. If you're not Christian, you're evil, and you can probably extend that to kind of other Abrahamic religions as well. But like,
well, sure. I mean, Christian, that's not weird by Christian terms. Mainstream Christianity. I mean, millions and billions of people believe that we're going to hell.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Either you're saved by Jesus or you're going to hell. That's it. There's no gray area.
No middle ground. No.
There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. And the only people who are going to heaven are me and my mates. Everybody else is evil and doomed. That's straight up mainstream Christianity. There's nothing. I mean, it's completely, utterly insane. But it's believed by billions of people.
Yeah,
it's how they act on that belief, and this whole concept of spiritual warfare, which I ended up doing quite a bit of research about. I think at the time, in the late 80s, when the Satanic Panic started, we didn't quite realise how pervasive that idea was. That these are the end times, and you have to fight Satan anywhere he manifests, whether it's fancy role-playing games, heavy metal music, or somebody opening a cult shop in your local town. It's worth stressing that there were 2 cases of occult bookshops being firebombed during the Satanic Panic.
One of them being the one I worked in.
Yeah, one that Rodney worked in. The Social Apprentice was firebombed, and I think in September '89. And then a shop in Lincoln called Bridge of Dreams was firebombed and completely gutted in 1991. There was a level of danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't all fun and games.
Yeah.
When I worked at the Sorcerers, it became my job to open up the mail every day, and pretty much almost every day, certainly at least once a week, we would get death threats. All the time, and I was opening those letters and reading them out. I mean, usually they were funny. They were usually written in green ink with really bad spelling, but from obvious psychopaths.
Yeah.
But that was the scary part. I mean, these people were so psychopathic and that they would have done it, and eventually somebody did. So we had to take a lot of we had to take a lot of precautions going into the store. Yeah. Because the store was like just a little back street in Leeds. But we would, if I was going to work, I would never I would never go into the store when there was somebody else on the street who could see me going in.
Right.
I'd always wait until the street was empty. Same going out. We had mirrors up outside the doors, so we could, all the windows were blacked out, so no one could see in. But we had like mirrors up above, and so we could look out and see if there was anybody in the street waiting to accost us leaving the building and stuff like that. It was pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, again, I think it's very useful to people to hear that, because it's not just shitty online comments,
No.
It's got real world implications.
It has, and this was a time where if you were publicly outed as an occultist in the media, you could lose your job.
Yeah,
your neighbours could push shit through your letterbox, or spit at you in the street. You could be socially ostracised.
Yeah.
To a level that I think is hard to understand nowadays. Nowadays, people don't bat an eye.
Yeah.
About pagans in public. We have a British Pagan Police Association. That's how far we've come.
Wow.
But in those days, if you were outed, particularly as a devil worshipping Satanist, which you tend to end up being in the media, particularly during the Satanic Panic, losing your job was a real thing.
Yeah,
being attacked in the street was a real thing.
We all knew people who that happened to,
just for wearing a pentagram.
Man alive, scary. Yeah,
but it was a lot of fun at the same time.
We made it own fun. I mean, we were lucky in the sense that we were young, free, and single. We were. I was working at an Occult store. I didn't have to worry about losing my job. And I was a musician, so who cares? And we didn't have families. We didn't have kids we needed to look after. We didn't really give a shit. And
we didn't have any money either.
And we didn't have any money, so they couldn't sue us. It wasn't worth their while. So we were in a very privileged position in the sense that we were very unprivileged. We had nothing to lose.
Right.
And so we took that as being, okay, we're in a position here. We can say things that other people can't because it's too scary for them. So let's go and say these things. Let's us do it. We'll stand up and be counted and let people shoot at us because we have nothing to lose. And we very much did that. And the thing is, like, pagan news, you got to remember, also just wasn't read by pagans. It was read by everybody who's at all involved with this. So, like, we would see, like, a news report from inside an MP's office in the Houses of Parliament, and there'd be a copy of Pagan News lying on the desk. There'd be, talk radio, and the talk radio host would be reading excerpts from Pagan News. It became very widespread. If anyone was involved in anything to do with the Satanic Panic, in journalism, as a politician, priests, you name it, they all had copies of Pagan News because that was where the information was.
I suspect they didn't all buy copies. I think one copy got passed around, but that's okay. We were reaching people. If we
didn't care.
We never. One
of the things we did in the early days, in order to get to the widest amount of people possible, is we encouraged people to photocopy it. We gave people a license to copy it.
Okay.
So and originally the magazine was single sheets of A4 stapled together. Right. So we told people, if you got it and you like it, and you've got access to a copier, just take the staples out, copy it, run off 50 copies. If you've got like a free copier at work or at school that you can go in on a Thursday night when everyone's gone home, run off 100 copies and just give them to all your friends. And we encouraged that. So our circulation was much wider than our sales figures. For every one we sold, I reckon there was at least 5 people reading it, at least. And because of that, because we were like, just get the news out, get the information out. And for advertisers, we would tell that as well. So like, actually, here's our figures that we sell, but our actual circulation, we reckon, is at least 5 times what we're selling.
Right.
And the advertisers loved that because they were getting to a huge number of people.
This was very much a kind of like an ethos of zines in that period. Zines were DIY things. They were not meant to be curated and stuck on a shelf. They just, you shove them out as fast as you can. And earlier, Darry, you talked about zines coming back, and there has been a resurgence in pagan zines. But for the most part, they're very highly produced. They're very nice looking. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they're well polished. Yeah,
they're very well polished. They've got good, lots of colour photographs, lots of very high quality graphic design. But they're not like Pagan News, which is just like, thrown out every 3 weeks. They're not like the majority of zines in that period. I don't think any of us ever thought they'd be collectible.
Yeah.
Now, I look at zines I produced back in the 80s and going for 30 quid on eBay, and I think, wow, I never thought that they'd be worth
30 quid. Try 300 quid.
And then I think, shit, I wish I'd kept a box full.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I sold a bunch of I was moving, and I sold a bunch of old books that I didn't want anymore. A lot of old occult books to a specialist occult bookseller.
Yeah.
And he came around to have a look at what I had, which is a big collection. And he was like, and there was a bunch of old magazines that I was about to throw away. And he pounced on those and was like, oh, I want these. And I'm like, you want the magazines? He was like, yeah, these are worth way more than the books are. And I was genuinely shocked at how valuable magazines from the 80s were. But yeah, they're difficult to get because they were throwaway. So people threw them away. So now what's left is rare. So I mean, Pagan News was designed to be very much designed to be throwaway, and we wanted it that way. I mean, we didn't. I mean, I think we had a good eye for layout, but most pagan magazines back then, they always had a cover that was like some line drawing of some fantasy elf riding through Stonehenge or whatever, and just bullshit. And then it would have pages of pagan poetry about tra-la-la, the Mario, and all. And we were like, fuck that shit. We don't want any of that shit. So our front page was a news. We called ourselves a newspaper, not a magazine. And our front page was the headlines, was the articles. We were straight into boom, and said Pagan News at the top, and then bang, the headline. Here's the big news, straight into it. And we didn't want to faff around. It was just right in your face all the time. Here's what's going on. And we edited really heavily all the articles. We cut, people, and in the early days we started, we would get articles from people that were like, if we'd printed them, it would be like 2/3 of the magazine would just have been that article. And we were just like, stop waffling, get to the point.
Yeah.
So we would cut things down to like 1/3 of their original size, just get to the point. And some people were really shocked by that, how hard we would edit their work. We were like, this is what we're doing here. Get to the freaking point. Don't waffle. Like every month we had a feature called Things to Do and Things to Read, which was very much a very practical exercise that you could do, like a little ritual, meditation, whatever it happened to be, and then a list of other books you could read and that was to go further. And that Things to Do, Things to Read was normally like, I don't know, half a page or page.
Most.
Yeah, it was
maximum one here.
Yeah, maximum 1 page. Absolutely maximum, usually 1 column, because we're like, how much information do you need with this? Look, it was like, here's what to do, go do it, bam. And if you want to learn some more, here's 3 books to read. And that was very much the way we approached it. It was bam, 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 in your face all the time. Just get on with it.
I should add this, like it's there's an extraordinary volume in this book. I mean, it's like for those listening, like this isn't a taster, it is what I can see here is about kind of like 600 plus pages,
656 pages.
Yeah, I mean,
solid info.
Yeah,
like no fluff whatsoever.
Yeah. There's some astonishing stuff in
it's
here.
It's really dense. Yeah, dense,
really,
but funny and easy to read. That was the other thing. We were dealing with a lot of very heavy subjects, but we wanted to be entertaining and we wanted to be satirical because, it's like we took, Mel Brooks, when he did The Producers, people were saying like, how can you how can you like deal with these Nazi themes in such a flippant, funny way? And he was like, that's because that's the thing that kills them. You know, these people are funny. They are funny. They're absurd. Bring out their absurdity. You know, don't be, and you can't be scared of something if you're laughing at it.
Yeah.
And that was very much our attitude. Let's laugh at these assholes, not be scared of them, and let's defuse their own pretentiousness.
I'd take the piss.
And just take the, and it was funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
It was enjoyable.
There's a lot of humour in the occult, but you know, that wasn't really a prevalent thing in those days. There wasn't. Chris Bray did this magazine called The Lamp of Thoth, and I think that was really groundbreaking in lots of ways. One, because it had a gossip column that everybody read. Most you'd find out if you were in it. And two, he also had occult cartoons and funny stories, and I think that was a big influence for us. I thought, we want to do this too. We want to take the piss out of our own communities because they need it. You know, and they'll be better for it, hopefully.
Right. And we very much did that. I mean, like, there's another regular feature we had every month was famous occult stereotypes, which would be a cartoon and like a little interview, fake interview with a famous occult stereotype, like Beverly Gore, Crowley Bourne, you know, and Meredith Muir, his cult's quite obscure.
Sidney Herbert, tantric pervert, you know. These stereotypes are still out there, you know. You can,
certainly are.
You can go into your local occult gathering and still find Grevington Gore, Crowley Bourne holding forth, you know, or Sidney Herbert, tantric Herbert trying to chat up a 17-year-old girl and tell her that her chakras are very bright, you know. That's all still going on.
Yeah, Leslie Lord, Pagan Bard. You know, it was so we would run. So we took the piss out of our own community. Yeah, but it's a community. But some of the ridiculous, pretentious things that people came out with needed to be deflated.
Oh God, if that isn't the truth, 100%. Yeah, it really does need that. Like, still does. Yeah, I'm looking at a few of them here that like the famous cult stereotypes penned by Barry Hairbrush.
Barry Hairbrush. He was the third member of the team. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I like that.
So Barry Hairbrush, right? A lot of people thought that this was a pseudonym for me and Phil, but it was not. Barry Hairbrush was a real person. His name was not Barry Hairbrush. It was a pseudonym for somebody else. And he was another person we met at Leeds University Occult Society. Right. And he was the straightest person you would ever meet in your life. If you saw him on the street, you'd think it was like the most middle-class, middle-aged, normal guy in the world.
I think normal is stretching the point, but then we did know it.
Yeah, but then
exactly normal.
But inside, he was the most surreal human being I've ever met in my life. And so we got to know him at the University Occult Society. The other thing that we all got together, every week we'd get together and play role-playing games around in my house. So, and it was the whole Pagan news team would play together. Us two, Janet Cliff, a guy called Robin Turner, who ended up as a professor of English in Ankara University in Turkey. And so one day this guy Barry Hairbrush turned up and said, you know, I want to come play with you. And I'm like, great. So we were running role-playing games, and during the games he would sit there sketching, and he would do little cartoons in real time of everything that was happening in the game, and like just toss them in the middle, and we would laugh our asses off. And so he was like, yeah, I want to do something for Pagan News. And so he started doing these cartoons and these insanely bizarre stories for us. And that
Christianity a Shock Expose was the first one.
That was the first one, I think it was.
Yeah,
Christianity
we got
a
a lot
Shock
of complaints
Expose.
about that.
Yeah.
People didn't like us taking the piss out of Christianity.
Yeah, it's like I turned up at a church surrounded by dead bodies, some barely 6 feet underground. I think it was the opening line of the very first article he wrote for us. And we just loved this because we loved this whole news of the world, shock expose style crap journalism. And so we wanted to pastiche that kind of shitty journalism. And Barry was great at that. And then he turned up with what was it? The Computer Writes Out by Barry Hairbrush Wheatley, which was a pastiche of all the Dennis Wheatley books, which were really big in the 70s and the 80s, like The Devil Rides Out and To the Devil a Daughter, and which we loved. I mean, The Devil Rides Out is a brilliant movie. I love that movie so much. So he pastiched that, and then he did H.P. Saucecraft and the Tentacles of Naughtiness.
Yeah.
And so we ran those as serials in the magazine as well.
Right.
Every episode. So
brilliant.
So that was
there was one he did, the Norse gods, are they to split, which treated
Norse
some, treated some
Yeah.
deities of the Norse pantheon like they were a rock band. We got several complaints about that one from people who follow the Norse gods.
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you take the piss out of my gods? Like,
Grievington Gore, Crowley Boar.
Yeah, there's plenty of those still around.
Fucking hell, is there ever?
You had me on the show.
So with these,
Says the guy who wrote 2 books about Alistair Crowley.
For people who want to find out more about yourselves and to want to follow you on social media, what's the best place for them to do so?
I'll send you links. I'm on Blue Sky and Fartbook, and you can probably find a load of scurrilous information about me on Wikipedia as well. And I've got a blog, and I'll send you all the details.
Brilliant.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
I'm the only. Hey, wait.
Oh, my apologies, Rodney. Pardon me.
How dare you? I'm the only Rodney Orpheus in the world. So if you just type Rodney Orpheus into Google, it'll come up, or any pretty much any social media, whatever. I'm there somewhere, or RodneyOrpheus.com.
Fantastic.
Or Phil's website, which you forgot to mention, enfolding.org, which is a very good website.
Brilliant. Well, I really enjoyed today. This has been a great conversation. I've got it open on the screen beside me, so I've been flicking through, and I've got the Pat Mills version. I'm gonna start talking again. Sorry, I'll wrap it up soon now. But it's like it's talking about Slain or Slania and like the Horn God. I have all those upstairs. I fucking love those comics.
Well, there's a volume of Slain that's got a piece of advertising from Pagan News on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the line was, because we reviewed Slain in Pagan News. We called it, I think it was Frater Impecunious who did it, and he said he called it the Thinking Man's Conan.
Yeah.
And on one of the volume collections, you'll find it on the back.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'll check that out, and I really look forward to the volume arriving. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, gents,
you're welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the Spirit Box.
Thank you very much.
Fun again, and let's do this.
Well, thanks to everyone for watching. We really appreciate it.
And have a nice day and all that.
Now, I hope you enjoyed that. That was brilliant. What a brilliant chat that was. Just reminds me how much I love that type of publication, those zines. I absolutely adore them. They're brilliant. I love the rawness of them. I love comics overall, to be honest. So yeah, I'm probably going to go and read some of my comics now, because that's really got me nostalgic for that time. Now, if you want to pick up a copy of Delinquent Elementals, then the link is in the show notes. But it's in all good online bookstores. If you want to make sure that Phil and Rodney and the publisher get a little bit more of the action, then buy directly from them. You can see the link below, astrangeattractor.co.uk. Right, I'm going to leave it there. You've been wonderful. I've been Dara Mason. Talk soon and take care. Bye.